The summer heat beat down on Arlington National Cemetery as tourists gathered around the tomb of the unknown soldier. Among them stood Marcus Rodriguez, a decorated Marine sergeant on leave from his third deployment in Afghanistan. His chest bore the ribbons of a Purple Heart and Bronze Star, medals earned through blood and sacrifice in the mountains of Kandahar. Marcus watched the tomb guard with growing irritation. The soldier stood perfectly still, his rifle gleaming in the afternoon sun. Every 21 steps he would turn with mechanical precision, never breaking his solemn routine. To Marcus, this looked like nothing more than fancy parade ground nonsense. "Look at this guy," Marcus muttered to his girlfriend Sarah, who stood beside him taking photos, playing dress-up while real Marines are getting shot at overseas. The crowd around them fell silent as the changing of the guard ceremony began. The relief guard approached with measured steps, each movement calculated and deliberate. Marcus rolled his eyes at what he saw as unnecessary pageantry. During his deployments, Marcus had seen real combat. He had pulled wounded buddies from burning vehicles and returned fire while under heavy assault. The idea that someone could earn respect by walking back and forth in a clean uniform rankled him deeply. As the ceremony continued, Marcus grew more agitated. He had lost friends in combat, good Marines who would never come home. Meanwhile, this tomb guard got praised for what looked like elaborate theater. The contrast felt like an insult to everyone who had bled for their country. When the ceremony ended and tourists began to disperse, Marcus made his decision. He pushed through the crowd, ignoring Sarah's protests. His combat boots echoed on the marble as he approached the tomb guard, who had resumed his vigilant watch. The tomb guard, Corporal James Chen, stood motionless despite sensing the approaching footsteps. He had been walking this post for 8 months, having earned the honor through grueling training and unwavering dedication. Every step he took honored the unknown soldiers who lay beneath the marble, and he took that responsibility seriously. Marcus stopped just outside the restricted area, his voice carrying across the sacred ground. "Hey, soldier boy. Must be nice playing pretend while real warriors fight actual wars." Tourists turned in shock at the outburst. Sarah grabbed Marcus's arm, trying to pull him away, but he shrugged her off. The alcohol from lunch had loosened his tongue and fueled his resentment. Chen remained perfectly still, his eyes fixed straight ahead. His training had prepared him for disruptions, but this felt different. This was a fellow service member questioning his honor and dedication. "I said something to you," Marcus shouted, stepping closer to the rope barrier. "Too good to acknowledge a real combat veteran?" The silence stretched on, broken only by the whispers of horrified tourists. Security guards began moving toward the disturbance, but Marcus was not finished. In his mind, he was defending every Marine who had ever faced enemy fire, while this tomb guard received accolades for ceremony. Without warning, Marcus ducked under the rope and approached Chen directly. The crowd gasped as he reached out and shoved the tomb guard's shoulder, trying to break his concentration. "There," Marcus said with satisfaction. "Not so perfect now, are you?" What happened next would change Marcus's understanding of honor, service, and what it truly meant to be a warrior. The tomb guard's response would reveal a depth of character and skill that Marcus had never imagined possible. Corporal James Chen felt the shove, but remained perfectly still for 3 more seconds, completing his programmed pause before his next movement. Then, with the same mechanical precision he had shown all day, he executed a flawless about-face and looked directly into Marcus's eyes. The tomb guard's gaze was steady and calm, showing no anger or frustration despite the physical contact. Instead, there was something deeper there, a quiet confidence that made Marcus suddenly uncomfortable. "Sir, I'm going to ask you to step back behind the rope and maintain an atmosphere of silence and respect," Chen said in a clear, measured voice that carried across the entire plaza. Security guards rushed forward, but Chen raised his hand slightly, a signal that he had the situation under control. Marcus found himself stepping backward involuntarily, something in the tomb guard's presence commanding respect despite his earlier bravado. "That's all you got?" Marcus challenged, though his voice had lost some of its earlier conviction. "A polite request?" Chen moved with fluid grace, repositioning himself between Marcus and the tomb. His movements were economical and purposeful, like a coiled spring ready to release. The tourists watched in fascination as the confrontation unfolded. "Sir, this is hallowed ground where unknown service members rest in honor," Chen continued. I would ask that you respect their sacrifice and the families who will never know where their loved ones are buried. Something in those words hit Marcus harder than he expected. He thought of his friend Tommy Nguyen, whose body had never been recovered after their convoy hit an IED outside Kabul. Tommy's parents still held on to hope that their son might somehow come home. But Marcus pushed that thought away, his pride refusing to let him back down. You think walking around in circles honors anybody? I've actually been in combat. I've seen real sacrifice, Chen nodded slowly. I can see from your ribbons that you have served with distinction, Sergeant. Purple Heart and Bronze Star. Those represent real courage and sacrifice. I respect that service deeply. The acknowledgement caught Marcus off guard. He had expected defensiveness or anger, not this calm recognition of his achievements. But Chen was not finished speaking. However, sir, you may not be aware of what it takes to earn the privilege of guarding this tomb. The selection process eliminates 90% of candidates. Those who remain must demonstrate not only military bearing but also exceptional skills that extend far beyond ceremonial duties. Marcus scoffed, though less convincingly than before. Like what? Fancy footwork? A small crowd had gathered, drawn by the unusual confrontation. Sarah stood at the edge, her face red with embarrassment at her boyfriend's behavior. Security guards waited nearby, ready to intervene if the situation escalated. Chen's expression remained neutral as he continued. Tomb guards must qualify as expert marksmen with multiple weapon systems. We train daily in combat tactics, close quarters combat, and counter-surveillance techniques. The ceremonial aspect you see represents only a small portion of our duties. Sure it does, Marcus replied, but doubt was creeping into his voice. Sir, if you would be willing to join me at the firing range after my duty shift ends, I would be happy to demonstrate some of these skills. Perhaps we could engage in a friendly competition between Marines. The challenge hung in the air like a gauntlet thrown down. Marcus felt the eyes of every tourist upon him, waiting to see if he would accept or back down. His pride demanded that he accept, but something in Chen's quiet confidence warned him that this might not end the way he expected. Chen checked his watch with practiced efficiency. My shift ends in 45 minutes, Sergeant. The base firing range is available for use until 1800 hours. Would you be interested in settling this matter through marksmanship, rather than disrupting this sacred ceremony? Marcus looked around at the faces surrounding him. Some showed disapproval at his earlier behavior, while others seemed curious about how this unusual challenge would unfold. Sarah was shaking her head frantically, trying to signal him to walk away. But Marcus had never backed down from a challenge in his life, and he was not about to start now. Besides, he was an excellent shot, one of the best in his unit during deployment. How skilled could someone be who spent his days walking back and forth in dress uniform? You're on, soldier boy, Marcus said, his confidence returning. But don't cry when a real Marine shows you how it's done. Chen simply nodded and resumed his post, returning to his vigilant watch as if nothing had happened. The tourists gradually dispersed, but many lingered, sensing that something significant had just been set in motion. Marcus waited with Sarah in uncomfortable silence, both of them wondering what would happen when the tomb guard's shift ended. Neither of them realized they were about to witness skills that would completely shatter Marcus's assumptions about honor, duty, and what it truly meant to serve. At exactly 1700 hours, Corporal Chen was relieved by another tomb guard in a ceremony that Marcus now watched with grudging attention to detail. Every movement was precise, every gesture meaningful. The new guard took his position with the same unwavering dedication Chen had shown throughout the day. Chen approached Marcus and Sarah, no longer in his ceremonial stance but still carrying himself with quiet dignity. Up close, Marcus could see that Chen was younger than he had first appeared, probably mid-20s, with intelligent eyes and calloused hands that spoke of more than ceremonial duties. Sergeant Rodriguez, I appreciate you waiting, Chen said, extending his hand in a gesture of respect. I'm Corporal James Chen, and I'm ready for our competition if you still wish to proceed. Marcus shook the offered hand, surprised by the firm grip and the genuine warmth in Chen's demeanor. Without the formal restraints of his ceremonial duty, Chen seemed more human, more approachable. But Marcus was still determined to prove his point about real versus ceremonial service. The base firing range was a short drive from Arlington Cemetery. As they walked toward Chen's vehicle, Sarah pulled Marcus aside. Baby, maybe we should just go, she whispered urgently. You've already made your point. This guy seems really confident about his shooting. Marcus waved off her concerns. Sarah, I've been in actual firefights. I've hit targets while people were shooting back at me. How hard can it be to outshoot someone who spends his time marching around a tomb? But as they drove to the range, Marcus found himself studying Chen more carefully. The tomb guard drove with the same precision he showed in ceremony, but there was also an alertness about him, a constant awareness of his surroundings that Marcus recognized from combat veterans. At the firing range, Chen signed them in and selected their equipment with practiced efficiency. He chose a standard M4 rifle, the same weapon Marcus had used extensively in Afghanistan. The range officer, a grizzled Marine gunnery sergeant, greeted Chen with obvious respect. "Evening, Chen. Working on your quals again? Just a friendly competition tonight, Gunny. Sergeant Rodriguez here is a decorated combat veteran. I thought we might exchange some techniques." The range officer looked Marcus over, noting his ribbons and bearing. "Good to meet you, Sergeant. Chen here holds some pretty impressive records on this range. Should be interesting to watch." Marcus felt a flicker of unease but pushed it aside. Records meant nothing compared to real combat experience. He had learned to shoot while people were trying to kill him. That was training no range could provide. Chen suggested they start with basic accuracy at 100 meters, using iron sights only. "Standard qualification course if that's acceptable to you, Sergeant. We can progress to more challenging distances if you prefer." "Sounds good to me," Marcus replied, checking his rifle and settling into position. He was an expert marksman according to his military records, and he had the medals to prove his effectiveness in combat. The first round of shooting went well for Marcus. His shots grouped tightly around the center of the target, showing the skill and training that had served him well in Afghanistan. He was pleased with his performance and confident that he was demonstrating his superiority over the ceremonial soldier. Chen fired his rounds with the same mechanical precision he showed at the tomb. His breathing was controlled, his stance perfect, his trigger pull smooth and consistent. When they called the target forward, Marcus was prepared to see decent but inferior shooting from his opponent. Instead, he stared in disbelief at Chen's target. Every single shot had hit within a circle no larger than a quarter, clustered so tightly they almost formed a single ragged hole. It was shooting that belonged in competition circles, not on a military qualification range. "Not bad," Marcus said, trying to keep the surprise out of his voice. "You've obviously practiced a lot." Chen simply nodded and suggested they move to 200 meters, then 300. At each distance, the same thing happened. Marcus shot well, demonstrating the marksmanship skills that had earned him recognition in his unit. But Chen shot with a precision that seemed almost mechanical, grouping his shots with consistency that Marcus had never seen outside of special operations units. The range officer watched with growing interest, occasionally making approving comments about Chen's technique. Other shooters on the range began to take notice, drawn by the obvious skill being displayed. As they prepared for the final round at 400 meters, Marcus was beginning to realize that he had seriously underestimated his opponent. Chen's shooting was not just good. It was exceptional by any standard Marcus had ever seen. "Where did you learn to shoot like that?" Marcus asked, genuine curiosity beginning to replace his earlier antagonism. Chen finished loading his magazine before answering. "The same place I learned everything else about being a soldier, Sergeant. Through training, practice, and dedication to excellence." The answer was simple, but it carried an implication that Marcus was only beginning to understand. Perhaps there was more to being a tomb guard than he had realized. Perhaps ceremony and combat were not as different as he had assumed. The 400-meter targets looked impossibly small through the iron sights. Marcus had made shots at this distance in combat, but those had been aimed at human-sized targets, not the precise bullseyes now staring back at him. The wind had picked up slightly, adding another variable to an already challenging shot. Marcus settled into position, drawing on all his combat experience. He controlled his breathing, found his natural point of aim, and squeezed the trigger with the same steady pressure that had served him well in firefights across Afghanistan. His shots were good, better than most soldiers could manage at this distance. Chen took his position with the same calm demeanor he had shown throughout the competition. But now Marcus was watching more carefully, and he began to notice details that had escaped him earlier. Chen's breathing pattern was perfectly controlled, his body position optimized for stability. Even his eye movement was deliberate. scanning wind indicators and reading environmental conditions with practiced skill. When Chen fired, each shot was preceded by the same ritual: a precise assessment of conditions, a controlled breathing sequence, and a trigger pull so smooth it seemed like meditation in motion. The rifle barely moved in his hands, as if it were an extension of his own body. The targets came forward, and Marcus felt his last vestiges of confidence crumble. His shots formed a respectable group, the kind that would earn praise in most military units. But Chen's target showed 5 holes clustered within a space smaller than a silver dollar, placed with surgical precision in the exact center of the bullseye. "How?" Marcus asked, staring at the impossible accuracy. "How is that even possible?" The range officer walked over to examine the targets himself, whistling in appreciation. "Chen, I think that might be a new range record. What do you think? About a 2-inch group at 400 meters with iron sights." Chen examined his target with the same analytical attention he gave everything else. "Close, Gunny, perhaps 2¼ inches. Still room for improvement." Marcus looked between the target and Chen in amazement. In his entire military career, he had never seen shooting like this outside of specialized sniper units. And Chen spoke about it as if it were routine, just another day at the office. "Sergeant Rodriguez," Chen said, turning to Marcus with the same respectful tone he had maintained throughout their competition. "You shoot very well. Your combat experience shows in your fundamentals, but perhaps you would like to see what tomb guards train for beyond ceremonial duties." Without waiting for an answer, Chen walked to the range equipment locker and returned with a spotting scope and what appeared to be a much more sophisticated rifle. Marcus recognized it as a precision instrument, the kind used by military snipers and special operations units. "This range extends to 800 meters, Chen explained, setting up the scope. "At that distance, you're dealing with bullet drop, wind drift, temperature effects, and atmospheric pressure variations. It requires not just marksmanship, but an understanding of ballistics and environmental factors." Chen methodically set up his equipment, making calculations on a small notepad and adjusting his scope with precise clicks. Marcus watched in fascination as Chen transformed from ceremonial guard to precision marksman, every movement purposeful and professional. "Tomb guards maintain proficiency at extended ranges because our duties extend beyond the ceremony you witnessed today," Chen explained as he worked. "We are responsible for the security of Arlington National Cemetery, including threat assessment and response capabilities. Some threats require engagement at considerable distance." The implications of Chen's words began to sink in. Marcus had assumed that tomb guards were essentially ceremonial troops, soldiers chosen for their appearance and ability to march in formation. He was beginning to realize that the selection criteria might be considerably more demanding. Chen chambered around and settled behind his rifle with practiced efficiency. At 800 meters, the target was barely visible to the naked eye, a small speck against the distant backstop. Through the spotting scope, Marcus could see it clearly, a standard bullseye target that looked impossibly small at this range. "The shot will take approximately 1.2 seconds to reach the target," Chen said quietly, more to himself than to Marcus. "Wind is shifting slightly from the left, maybe 3 miles per hour. Temperature dropping as the sun sets." Chen's breathing slowed to an almost meditative rhythm. Marcus found himself holding his own breath as he watched through the spotting scope, waiting for the shot that would either confirm or challenge everything he thought he knew about this quiet soldier. The rifle cracked once, the sound echoing across the range. Through the scope, Marcus watched in stunned silence as a hole appeared in the exact center of the distant target. "Jesus," Marcus whispered. "That's over half a mile." Chen worked the bolt smoothly and prepared for his second shot. "Would you like to try a shot at this distance, Sergeant? It might give you a better appreciation for the training standards we maintain." Marcus looked at the distant target, then at Chen's calm, confident expression. For the first time since the confrontation at the tomb began, Marcus was beginning to understand that he might have made a serious error in judgment about what it took to earn the honor of guarding the unknown soldiers. Marcus took the precision rifle with hands that trembled slightly, though whether from excitement or growing humility, he could not say. The weapon felt different from anything he had used in combat, heavier, more substantial, engineered for a single purpose with uncompromising precision. Chen guided him through the basic setup, explaining wind calculations and bullet drop compensation with the patience of a teacher. Marcus listened carefully, realizing that this was knowledge far beyond what he had learned in basic marksmanship training. This was the science of precision shooting, requiring mathematical understanding alongside physical skill. At this distance, everything matters, Chen explained. The humidity in the air, the rotation of the earth, even your heartbeat between shots. Combat shooting teaches you to hit your target under stress. Precision shooting teaches you to place your bullet exactly where you intend, every single time. Marcus settled behind the rifle and peered through the high-powered scope. The distant target leaped into sharp focus, but it still looked impossibly small. He could see Chen's first shot, a perfect hole dead center in the bullseye. The pressure to perform well felt overwhelming. Following Chen's guidance, Marcus made his calculations and adjusted his scope settings. He controlled his breathing, found his natural point of aim, and slowly squeezed the trigger. The rifle bucked against his shoulder, and he quickly looked through the spotting scope to see where his shot had landed. The bullet had hit the target, barely. It was several inches low and to the right, a shot that would have missed a human-sized target completely. In combat, it would have been a clean miss that could have cost lives. Not bad for a first attempt at this distance, Chen said encouragingly. Your fundamentals are solid. With practice and proper instruction, you could develop this skill significantly. Marcus handed the rifle back to Chen, feeling a mixture of disappointment and growing respect. How long did it take you to learn to shoot like this? Chen considered the question as he prepared for his next shot. I qualified as an expert marksman before applying for tomb guard duty. But the precision shooting you've seen today took about 2 years of daily practice under the guidance of some exceptional instructors. 2 years of daily practice? Marcus repeated. For a ceremonial position? The ceremony is what the public sees, Chen replied, settling behind his rifle. But tomb guards are selected from volunteers who already demonstrate exceptional military skills. We undergo additional training in multiple disciplines: marksmanship, hand-to-hand combat, security procedures, and ceremonial protocol. The public ceremony represents only about 20% of our actual duties. Chen fired his second shot, and again the bullet found the exact center of the distant target. Marcus was beginning to understand that what he was witnessing was not luck or even exceptional talent, but the result of systematic training and unwavering dedication to excellence. What are the other 80% of your duties? Marcus asked, genuine curiosity replacing his earlier skepticism. Chen worked the bolt and prepared for his third shot. Cemetery security, threat assessment, VIP protection during high-profile visits, and counter-surveillance operations. Arlington Cemetery is a potential target for anyone wanting to make a statement against America. We train to prevent that from happening. The implications hit Marcus like a physical blow. While he had been dismissing Chen as a ceremonial soldier playing dress-up, the tomb guard had actually been trained as a precision marksman, security specialist, and protective agent. The skill level required for such duties was far beyond what Marcus had achieved in his own military career. Chen fired his third shot with the same mechanical precision, adding another perfect hole to the tight group forming in the center of the distant target. Sergeant Rodriguez, would you mind if I asked about your combat experience? I'm always interested in learning from soldiers who have seen action. Marcus found himself describing his deployments with less bravado than usual. He talked about the firefights, the improvised explosive devices, the constant stress of operating in hostile territory. But as he spoke, he began to realize that his experiences, while dangerous and demanding, had been quite different from the precision and discipline he was witnessing on this range. That sounds incredibly challenging, Chen said when Marcus finished. Operating under those conditions requires tremendous courage and adaptability. Those are qualities we respect deeply in the Tomb Guard unit. The simple acknowledgement meant more to Marcus than any medal or commendation he had received. Coming from someone whose skills he was only beginning to appreciate, the words carried weight that surprised him. Chen fired his final shots, completing a 5-shot group that could have been covered by a quarter at 800 meters. It was shooting that belonged in record books, demonstrated with the casual efficiency of routine training. As they packed up the equipment, Marcus found himself seeing Chen in an entirely different light. The quiet confidence he had mistaken for arrogance was actually the calm assurance of someone who had mastered his craft through years of dedicated effort. The ceremonial precision was not empty pageantry, but a reflection of standards that extended to every aspect of his duties. Corporal Chen, Marcus said as they prepared to leave the range, I owe you an apology. I made assumptions about you and your service that were completely wrong. Chen paused in cleaning his rifle and looked at Marcus directly. Sergeant, no apology is necessary. We all serve in different ways, and combat experience like yours deserves tremendous respect. Perhaps we simply misunderstood each other's roles in defending our country. The gracious response only deepened Marcus's sense of humiliation. He had attacked a fellow service member based on ignorance and prejudice, and that service member was responding with dignity and professional courtesy that Marcus realized he had not earned. The drive back to Arlington Cemetery passed in contemplative silence. Marcus stared out the window, processing everything he had witnessed and learned over the past few hours. His entire understanding of honor, service, and military excellence had been challenged and reshaped by a quiet soldier who had responded to disrespect with dignity and professional competence. Sarah, who had watched the entire competition in stunned silence, finally spoke up. "Marcus, I've never seen you this quiet after a shooting competition." Marcus turned to look at Chen, who was driving with the same careful attention he brought to everything else. "I've been thinking about what it means to serve with honor. I thought I understood it, but I'm not sure I really did." Chen glanced at Marcus in the rearview mirror. "Sergeant, if I may say so, your service in combat demonstrates honor in its purest form. You put yourself in danger to protect others and defend your country. That's the foundation that makes everything else possible. But there's more to it than that, isn't there?" Marcus asked. "What you do at the tomb, the way you train, the standards you maintain, that's about something bigger than individual achievement." As they pulled into the cemetery parking lot, Chen turned to face Marcus directly. "The unknown soldiers we guard represent every service member who made the ultimate sacrifice for their country. Some of them were probably a lot like you. Combat veterans who faced danger with courage and skill. Others might have been support personnel, medics or engineers who died serving their mission." Chen paused, choosing his words carefully. "When I stand guard at that tomb, I'm not just honoring the 3 unknown soldiers buried there. I'm representing the gratitude of a nation for everyone who has worn the uniform. That includes Marines like you who fought in Afghanistan, soldiers who served in Vietnam, sailors who died at Pearl Harbor, and airmen who never came home from bombing missions over Europe." The weight of those words settled over Marcus like a physical presence. He began to understand that the ceremony he had dismissed as pointless pageantry was actually a living memorial to service and sacrifice that extended far beyond any individual soldier. The precision you saw today, the training, the standards we maintain, all of that is our way of ensuring that the honor we show is worthy of the sacrifice being remembered. Chen continued. "When families visit the tomb, they need to see that their loved ones are being remembered by people who understand the cost of freedom." Marcus thought about his friend Tommy, whose body had never been recovered, and suddenly understood why the tomb of the unknown soldier existed. Tommy's parents would never have a grave to visit, but they could come to Arlington and know that somewhere, unknown soldiers like their son were being honored with the highest standards of military excellence. "I was wrong," Marcus said simply. "I was completely wrong about everything." Chen shook his head. "You weren't wrong about the importance of combat service, Sergeant. You just didn't have complete information about what we do here. That's understandable. Most people don't." As they walked back toward the tomb, now illuminated by spotlights in the gathering darkness, Marcus could see the night guard maintaining his vigil. The soldiers' movements were just as precise as Chen's had been during the day, each step taken with the understanding that he was honoring the sacrifice of unknown heroes. "Corporal Chen," Marcus said as they approached the memorial, "would it be possible for me to learn more about what you do here? Not to join, I know that's not how it works, but to understand better?" Chen smiled, the first completely relaxed expression Marcus had seen from him all day. "I think that could be arranged, Sergeant. We occasionally give detailed tours for other service members who are interested in learning about our mission." "I'd be honored to show you what we do when we're not walking the mat." Marcus extended his hand to Chen, this time with genuine respect rather than grudging acknowledgement. "Thank you, Corporal, for the shooting lesson, for your patience with my ignorance, and for showing me what it really means to serve with honor." Chen shook the offered hand firmly. "Thank you for your service, Sergeant Rodriguez. Your courage in combat makes it possible for us to honor the fallen in peace." As Marcus and Sarah walked away from the tomb, Marcus turned back one final time to watch the guard continuing his eternal vigil. The soldiers stood perfectly still, rifle gleaming under the lights, maintaining standards of excellence that honored every American who had ever worn the uniform. For the first time, Marcus understood that the guard wasn't just walking back and forth in a fancy uniform. He was keeping faith with the unknown dead, ensuring that their sacrifice would never be forgotten, and representing the highest ideals of military service through his unwavering dedication to perfection. The encounter had humbled Marcus completely, but it had also taught him something valuable about the different ways that warriors serve their country. Some fight on distant battlefields, others guard sacred ground at home, but all are united by their commitment to something greater than themselves. Marcus never did learn whether Chen had been in combat himself. It seemed like the wrong question to ask. What mattered was that both men understood their shared commitment to honoring those who had made the ultimate sacrifice, whether their names were known or forever lost to history.